Chapter 10 is taking a look at what do we do with our mobile Linux and OS operating systems and how they're different, because working in IT, you're asked to troubleshoot a lot of different areas. So our learning targets are going to be able to explain how to configure and secure and troubleshoot mobile, Mac, and Linux operating systems, as well as some of the subsets that go along with this. So the first section within Chapter 10 is going to be Android versus iOS. And one of the things that you need to realize is working in IT, you probably have a preference of one over the other, but you still need to be able to know how to interact and use the opposite operating system. So one of the main differences we have is developers choose to provide the source code, and software is said to be open source. And open source is a big difference. If the software program is, if the program's source code is not published, then the software is considered to be closed source. Released in 2008, the HTC Dream, the Android's operating system, has been customized for use on a wide range of electronic devices. Because Android is open and customizable, programmers can use it to operate devices like laptops, TVs, ebook readers. There's even been Android installation in devices like cameras, navigation systems, and portable media players. Released in 2007 on the first iPhone, the Apple iOS source code was not released to the public. To copy, modify, or redestruct iOS requires permissions from Apple. In the iOS ecosystem, apps were originally designed by Apple. Similarly, Google originally designed Android apps when it became clear that the operating systems were actually software platform. Apple and Google each released its own software development kit, or SDK. An SDK contains a number of software tools designed to allow external programs to be written for specific software packages. Developers who want to create Apple iOS apps must download and install Xcode, Apple's official integrated development environment, or IDE. Xcode, shown within your web page, can be downloaded at no cost and allows developers to write and test their own iOS apps in their iPhone simulator. Loading and running apps on an actual iOS device requires the payment of a yearly iOS developer program subscription fee. Xcode also contains a debugger, libraries, and handset simulator, documentation, and sample codes and tutorials. Google Android's SDS also includes many of the items listed above for Xcode, as well as a number of tutorials. The Android SDK supports several development platforms, which include computers running Linux, Mac OS X 10.5.8 or later, and Windows XP or later. Android Studio is a Google IDE for Android development. There are many other websites where Android apps can be found. It's important to only install apps from trusted sources. Apps downloaded from trusted sources are less likely to contain malicious code. The Google Play Store only allows installation of apps on devices that are compatible with the device. Sometimes a website contains a quick response or QR code. The QR codes are similar to a barcode but can contain much more information. To use a QR code, a special app accesses the camera on the mobile device to scan the code. The code contains a web link that allows a direct download of an app. Be careful when using QR codes and only allow downloads of installations from trusted sources. Android applications are packaged into archive formats called Android Application Package, or APK for short. When an Android application is compiled and ready for distribution, it's placed inside an APK file. Along with the app's compiled code, the APK contains resources, certificates, and assets required for the app's proper installation. The Apple Store is the only content source that iOS users are allowed to use to get apps and content. This ensures that Apple has cleared the content to be free of harmful code, meet strict performance guidelines, and does not infringe on copyrights. Similar to Apple's App Store, Google's Google Play, Microsoft launched its own application store in 2012, starting with Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012. In the Windows Store allows Windows users to download and install Windows Store apps. Push versus pull. There are two main methods for installing apps contents on mobile devices, push and pull. When a user runs the Google Play app or the App Store app from a mobile device, apps and contents that are downloaded are pulled from the server to the device. With Android users, a user can browse the Google Play Store on any desktop or laptop computer and purchase content. The content is pushed to the Android device from the server. iOS users are able to purchase content from iTunes and on a desktop or laptop computer that is pushed to an iOS device. There is another way to side install apps on an Android device. Apps can be downloaded from different sources on the internet and transferred to a mobile device through Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, data cabling, or other methods. This is called sideloading. Sideloading an application is not recommended because many sources of apps cannot be trusted. Only install apps from trusted sources and developers. And as a side note, Seymour High School does have a class called Mobile App Development where we go through and actually create Android apps. We create APKs and we install them on devices that we have, and we go through and test and simulate to see how it would take to run and install apps. So when we take a look at the difference between Android and iOS, can you easily identify where the home button is, how to move or delete an app, where the Wi-Fi settings? Typically, you are very familiar with the device that you own, but it sometimes can be difficult to go from there. So I use an Android device, so when I have to go through and find it on the iOS, it just takes me a little bit longer to do that. Much like a desktop or laptop computer, mobile devices organize icons and widgets on multiple screens for easy display. Once a screen is designated as the home screen, additional screens are accessed by sliding the home screen to the left or the right. Each screen contains navigation icons and the main area where icons and widgets are accessed, and notification and system icons. These screens indicators display which screen is currently displaying. The Android iOS uses a system bar to navigate apps and screens. The system bar is always displayed at the bottom of every screen. The system bar contains the following buttons. Back returns to the previous screen. Home returns to the home screen. Recent apps opens a thumbnail image of recently used apps, and menu, if available, shows additional options for the current screen. Android devices often come with the default Google search app pre-installed. To touch and then type text onto the box, select the device and then the internet for anything. Touch the microphone icon to enter the pattern and to begin searching using speech. As a result of Android's open source code, some manufacturers add functionality to the Android OS before deploying it in their devices. For example, Samsung Android tablets have a feature called the Mini App Tray, which contains shortcuts to apps that can be used at any time. Many manufacturers have followed the trend, resulting in apps or GUI elements that are only present in devices built by that specific manufacturer. We'll take a look at section 10-1 is going to focus on unmodified version of Android. Each Android device has an area that contains system icons such as the clock, battery, and radio signal. Apps such as email, text messaging, and Facebook often display status icons to indicate communication activity. To open the notification area on an Android device, you'd swipe down from the top. You can then go through and follow modifications that are open. You can respond to a notification by touching it, dismiss by swiping it off the screen, dismiss all notifications, toggle screen brightness. Another element of Android's user interface is the launcher. The launcher defines the format of the home screen and the look and feel of the icons, buttons, and color schemes and animations. Although Android includes a stock launcher, there's also other launchers available in the Google Play Store. You have the Nova Launcher, Google Now Launcher, and Action Launcher. The Google Now Launcher is created by Google and it comes installed by default on Nexus devices. It turns the leftmost screen into a Google Now, allowing for quick access to Google Now cards, searches, and various voice commands. Widgets are programs or pieces of information that display information right on the home screen. A weather widget, for example, can be placed on the home screen to display weather conditions. Often, a widget can be touched to launch an associated app. In the case of a weather app, on a full screen mode to display more information about the weather. Widgets are often helpful because they give you quick access to often used information and function. Other examples of widgets would be clock, weather, Wi-Fi on and off, power control. One widget that I use a lot is the Google Calendar. You will find on some mobile devices, multiple apps can be grouped together into folders to help organize them. If folders are not available, an app can be installed to provide this feature. Apps can be grouped in any way that you want to help increase functionality. The iOS interface works much the same way as our Android. Screens are often used to organize apps, and apps are launched with a touch. There are some important differences. There's no navigation icon. A physical button must be pressed instead of touching navigation icons, and no widgets. Only apps and other content can be installed on iOS device screens. No app shortcuts. Each app on a home screen is the actual app, not a shortcut. Unlike Android, iOS devices do not use a navigation icon to perform functions. A single physical button called the home button performs many of the same functions of the Android navigation buttons. The home button is at the bottom of the device and performs the following functions: wake, return to home screen, open the multitask bar, start Siri or voice control, and open audio controls. iOS devices have a notification center that displays all alerts in one location. To open the notification area on an iOS device, touch the top of the screen and swipe a finger down the screen. The following actions can be taken when notifications are open. Respond to it by touching it, or remove an alert by touching the X icon and clearing. iOS devices allow the user to quickly access common settings and switches, even if the device is locked. To access commonly used settings menus, swipe up from the very bottom of any screen, as shown on your web page. From the commonly used screen settings, users can toggle use settings such as airplane, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, adjust screen brightness, control the music player, access AirDrop, flashlight, clock, calendar, and camera. Spotlight, or the search tool, is another great resource. From any screen on an iOS device, you'll touch the screen and drag down to reveal the Spotlight search field. Any part of the screen except the very top or the very bottom should work. When the Spotlight search field is revealed, type what you're looking for. Spotlight shows suggest from many sources, including the internet, iTunes, and movie showtimes. iOS allows multiple apps to run at the same time. While you're working in one app, others may run into the background. The multitasking bar has been used to quickly switch between the apps that have been used recently, close apps that are running, and access commonly used settings. To open the multitasking bar, double-click the home button while the multitasking bar is visible. iOS will also show favorite and screen contacts of the top screen. The following actions can be performed in the multitasking bar: touch any app, swipe, tap on the favorite or recent contacts on the top of the screen, and swipe up an app to force the app to close. Many of the apps on an iOS device are able to show an alert badge. An alert badge is displayed as a small icon over an app. This icon is a number that indicates the amount of alerts from that app. The number might be how many missed calls you have, or how many text messages that you have, or how many updates are available. If an alert badge displays an exclamation mark, there's a problem with the app, and alert badges for apps inside a folder are displayed onto the folder. Touch the app to attend to the alerts. The start screen on a Windows phone is based on tiles. I want you to be aware of the Windows phone, but note that we don't have much access to it because it's not something that's very commonly used. So again, you can just kind of see what the Windows phone looks like from there. Most mobile device screens are rectangular in shape. This allows for content to be viewed in two different ways: portrait or landscape. Some content fits better in a specific way. For example, video fills the screen in landscape mode, but may not fill half the screen in portrait mode. An ebook viewed in portrait mode seems very natural because it's similar to the shape of an actual book. Typically, users can choose viewing mode that most comfortably fits them from most of the content. Many mobile devices contains a sensor, such as an accelerometer, that can determine how they're being held. Content is automatically rotated into the position of that device. This feature is very useful, for example, when taking a photograph. When the device is turned to landscape mode, the camera app also turns to landscape mode. When using a mobile device, you may need to adjust the brightness of the screen. Increase the screen brightness levels when using a mobile device outdoors because bright sunlight makes the screen very, very difficult to read. In contrast, in very low brightness, it's helpful when reading a book on a mobile device at night. The LCD screen for most mobile devices uses the most battery power. Lowering the brightness or using automatic brightness helps conserve battery power. So set your brightness to the lowest setting to get the most battery life from your device. Another common feature of mobile devices is GPS, Global Positioning System. GPS is a navigation system that determines the time and geographical location of the device by using messages from satellites in space and a receiver on Earth. A GPS radio receiver uses at least 4 satellites to calculate its position based on messages. GPS is very accurate and can be used under most weather conditions. However, sometimes dense foliage, tunnels, or tall buildings can interrupt your signal. There are GPS devices for cars, boats, and handheld devices held by hikers and backpackers. In mobile devices, GPS receivers have many different uses. Navigation, geocaching, geotagging, which embeds location information onto digital objects like photographs and video, specialized search results, and device tracking. You also have the option of using Wi-Fi calling. Instead of using a cellular carrier network, modern smartphones can use the internet to transport voice calls by taking advantage of local Wi-Fi hotspots. This is called Wi-Fi calling. Locations such as coffee shops, workplaces, and libraries or homes usually have Wi-Fi networks connected to the internet. The phone can transport voice calls through the local Wi-Fi hotspot. If there's no Wi-Fi hotspot within reach, the phone will use a cellular carrier's network to transport your voice calls. Wi-Fi calling can be very helpful in areas with poor cellular coverage because it uses the local Wi-Fi spot to help fill in the gaps. Wi-Fi hotspot must be able to guarantee the throughput of at least 1 megabytes per second to the internet for a good quality call. When Wi-Fi calling is enabled and is used during a voice call, the phone will display Wi-Fi next to the carrier name. Mobile payments is another way we go through and are using our devices. So we have premium SMS-based transactional payments. Basically, a consumer is going to send an SMS message to a carrier's special phone containing payment request. The seller is informed of the payment has received, and then the charge is added to the customer's phone bill. Slow speed or poor reliability or poor security are few shortcomings of this method. We also have direct mobile billing. It's often enabled during checkout and the user identifies him or her through two-factor authentication and allows a charge to be added to their mobile phone service. Mobile web payment uses the web page or dedicated app to complete the transaction. This method relies on wireless application protocol or WAP and usually requires the use of credit cards or pre-registration online of a payment solution such as PayPal. And you also have contactless NFC, or near-field communication. It's most often used in a physical store transaction. The consumer pays for a good or service by waving the phone near their payment system. Based on a unique ID, the payment is charged directly against a prepaid account or a bank account. NFC is also used by mass transportation searches, such as public parking sector and many more consumer areas. We'll talk about a VPN, or virtual private network. It's a private network that uses public network, usually the internet, to connect remote sites or servers together. Instead of using dedicated leases, a VPN uses virtual connections routed through the internet from the company's private network or to the remote site or employee. Many companies create their own virtual private network to accommodate the needs of remote employees and distant offices. With the proliferation of mobile devices, it was a natural move to add a VPN client to smartphones and tablets. When VPN is established from a client to a server, the client accesses the network behind the server as if it was connected directly to the network. Because VPN protocols allow for data encryption, the communication between a client and a server is secure and attractive to many businesses. When we talk about virtual assistants, digital assistants, sometimes called virtual assistants, is a program that understands natural conversational language and performs tasks for the end users. Mobile devices are powerful computers, making them a perfect platform for digital assistants. Popular Google Assistants are currently Google Now, Siri, and Cortana for Windows Phone, but we also know that is changing. These digital assistants rely on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and voice recognition technology to understand conventional style voice commands. Google Now is available on Android devices. You would just simply say, "Okay, Google," and they would go ahead and activate. Same thing for Siri. When you talk about emergency notification, we have wireless emergency notifications, or WEA, are mobile messages sent by authorities through mobile carriers by the USA government. Those partners include local and state public safety agencies, FEMA, the FCC, Department of Homeland Security, and the National Weather Service. Mobile carriers do not charge for WEA messages. Timely alerts can help save lives during an emergency, and with WEA, alerts are sent to mobile devices without a user having to download an app or subscribe to a service. WEAs look like regular messages and contain the type and time of an alert. Any recommended actions by the agency is issuing the alert. They are relatively short and have no more than 90 characters. To differentiate from irregular messages, WEA messages will be followed by a distinct pattern, vibration, and audio tone. There are 3 types of alerts: presidential alerts, imminent threat alerts, and amber alerts. You may need to register a device with the carrier or provide some type of unique identifier. Every mobile device has a unique 15-digit number called an International Mobile Equipment Identity, or IMEI. This number identifies the device to a carrier's network. The numbers come up from a family of devices called the Global System for Mobile Communication, or GSM. The number can often be found in the configuration settings of the device or in a battery compartment if the battery is removable. The user of the device is also identified using a unique number called the International Mobile Subscriber Identity, or IMSI. The IMSI is often programmed and can be a subscriber identifiable module, or a SIM. It can be programmed on the phone itself, depending on the network type. Section 10-2 is talking about how we're going to go through and secure mobile devices. Smartphones and tablets and other mobile devices contain sensitive data. If that device is lost, anyone can find the device, has access to contacts, messages, and web accounts. One method to help prevent theft is from using a passlock code. A passlock locks the device and puts it into power-saving state. The lock can also be delayed to engage after a specific amount of time passes after the device goes into a power-saving state. One common method for placing a mobile device into a sleep state is by quickly pressing the main power button. The device can also be set by a sleep state timer and certain mounts. The pass lock must be entered each time a device is turned on or resumes from a power-saving state. These are some of the most common types of pass lock codes. None removes any of the type of existing passcode locks for the device. Swipe, you slide an icon such as a lock arrow or to unlock the device. This is the least secure. A pattern looks for the device, locks the device when the user slides the finger over a screen in a certain pattern to unlock the device. The exact pattern must be repeated on the screen. PIN, or personal identification number, is a series of numbers. When the PIN is entered correctly, the device unlocks. Password, using this option is the least convenient, especially if the word is complicated or long, but can be very secure. A simple passcode, this is for iOS only. This is an option set on. The passcode must be a 4-digit number. When set to off, more complex passcodes such as characters, numbers, and symbols can be used. Touch ID is an iOS device only feature starting with iPhone 5S. It is also possible to lock an iOS device based on the user's fingerprint. The home button in the selected iPhone device contains a fingerprint scanner that can be used to unlock the device. When you go through an Android device, you want to go under Settings, Security, and Screen Lock to go through and set it up. You would have to go through using Android 5.0 Lollipop allows an extra set of unlock features. You have a trusted device, trusted places, face, voice, or on-body detection. Note, to increase security, some services will force the user to enter a passcode lock before they can be enabled. VPN and Microsoft Exchange accounts are two of such type of services. You can have issues with restrictions on failed login attempts. To unlock a mobile device when the passcode has been properly implemented requires entering the correct PIN, passcode, pattern, or other passcode type. In theory, a passcode such as a PIN couldn't be guessed enough time and perseverance. To prevent someone from trying to guess the passcode, mobile devices can be set to perform defined actions after a certain number of incorrect attempts have been made. For Android, the number of failed attempts before locked out of a device and version of Android iOS. It is common that the Android device will lock its passcode app from 4 to 12 times. After the device is locked, you can unlock it by entering the Gmail account information used to set up the device. For iOS, the device is disabled after 5 failed attempts. On the 6th failed attempt, the device remains disabled for 1 minute. Each failed attempt after 6 results in additional waiting time. Remember, incorrect passcodes must be different from each other in order to trigger the wait time. Remote backup is when mobile devices can be lost due to device failures or the loss or theft of the device. Data must always be backed up periodically to ensure that it can be recovered if needed. With mobile devices, storage is often the biggest limitation and is not removable. To overcome these limitations, remote device backups can be performed. A remote backup is when a device copies its data from the cloud storage using a backup app. If the data needs to be restored, you run the backup app and access to the website can retrieve data. For Android devices, the following items are automatically backed up remotely: calendar, mail, contacts. Google also keeps track of apps and contents that you've purchased so they can be downloaded again. Many apps are also available to remotely back up other items. iOS users are given 5 GB of storage for free. Additional storage can be purchased for a yearly fee. These items that can be used in iCloud backup location include calendar, mail, contacts, content that you purchased from the Apple App Store. This content does not count against your 5 GB total. Photos, settings configured within the device, accumulated app data from running apps, screen icons, text and media messages, and ringtones. One of the biggest things that I like to use is a location application. If a mobile device is misplaced or stolen, it's possible to find it using a location app. The locator app should be installed and configured on each mobile device before it's lost. Both Android and iOS have many different apps for remotely locating a device. Similar to Apple's Find My Phone, Android's Device Manager allows you to locate, ring, or lock a lost Android device to erase data from it. To manage a device, the user must visit Android Device Manager download and log in with a Google account used on the Android device. The Android Device Manager is included in the enabled in default in Android 5.x and can be found under Settings, Security, and Device Administration. Most iOS users use Find My app. It's shown on your web page, and the first step to install the app is to start it and follow the instructions. The Find My iPhone app can be installed on different iOS devices to locate it. If a second iOS device is not available, the device can also be found by logging onto the iCloud website using the Find My iPhone feature. The Locator app uses location data from the following sources to locate it: cellular towers, Wi-Fi hotspot, and GPS. If attempts to locate a mobile device has failed, there are other security features that can prevent data on the device from being compromised. Two of the most commonly used remote security features are Remote Lock and Remote Wipe. For these remote security features to function, the device must be powered on and connected to a cellular or Wi-Fi network. Antivirus is also a big thing to talk about. Computers are vulnerable to malicious software, and smartphones and other mobile devices are computers, so they're also vulnerable. Antivirus apps are available for Android and iOS. Depending on the permissions granted to your antivirus apps when they are installed on your Android device, the app might not be able to scan files automatically or run scheduled scans. File scans must be initiated manually. iOS does not allow automatic or scheduled scans. This is a safety feature to prevent malicious programs from using unauthorized resources or contaminating other apps on the operating system. Some antivirus apps also provide locator services, Remote Lock, or Remote Swipe. Mobile devices run in a sandbox. A sandbox is a location of the operating system that keeps code isolated from other resources and code. It's difficult for malicious programs to infect a mobile device because apps run inside the sandbox. An Android app asks for permission to access certain resources upon installation. A malicious app has access to any resources that were allowed permissions during installation. This is another reason why it's really important to download apps only from trusted resources. Due to the nature of a sandbox, malicious software does not usually damage mobile devices. It's far more likely for a mobile device to transfer malicious programs from another device, such as a laptop or a desktop. Mobile operating systems are usually protected by a number of software restrictions. An unmodified copy of an iOS, for example, will only execute authorized code, allowing very limited access to its file system. Rooting and jailbreaking are two names for removing restrictions and protections added to mobile operating systems. Rooting is the term used for an Android device, and jailbreaking is used for iOS. The manufacturer restrictions are removed from these devices, allowing them to run arbitrary user code, granting users full access to the file system and full access to kernel modes. Rooting or jailbreaking on a mobile device usually voids the manufacturer's warranty, and it's not recommended that you modify a customer's mobile device in this way. Nevertheless, a large group of users come to remove their own device's restrictions. These are sometimes the benefits of rooting or jailbreaking a mobile device. Your GUI can be very heavily customized and can be made to have the operating system improve the speed and responsiveness of the device. Note, jailbreaking process is completely reversible. To remove the jailbreak and bring the device back to its factory state, you would need to connect it to iTunes and perform a restore. Android is based on Linux and therefore open source by nature. Because of this, Google has chosen to support rooting, deliberately allowing it in every Android release. Users who wish to root an Android device can do so without the need to search for vulnerabilities. Like the iOS on a mobile device or laptop, you can update and patch an operating system on a mobile device. Updates add functionality or increase performance. Patches can fix security problems or issues with hardware. Because there's so many different Android mobile devices, update and patches are not released as one package for all devices. Sometimes a new version of the Android cannot install the older device, whereas the hardware does not meet the minimum specifications. These devices might receive patches to fix known issues, but not receive any operating system upgrades. Android updates and patches are used automated process for delivery. When a carrier or manufacturer has an update for a device, a notification is shown on the device, and you'll touch the update to begin. That is section 10.1 and 10.2.